on this episode of the Girl Talk Podcast.
We've all got an aspect of God in us. And this book suggested that when you're struggling to interact with someone, think about what aspect of God is in them. What is that part of God in them?
Hello there. You are listening to the Girl Talk Podcast. My name is Carol.
I'm Kelly.
Hey, I'm Trisha.
And today we're talking about those sandpaper people. You know the ones you know you should love, but somehow they're just so difficult. And they seem to enjoy being difficult. How in the world do you love people who sometimes rub you the wrong way?
My probably biggest concern or circumstance is that people sometimes God puts people in my life who drive me nuts. But that doesn't mean
that's called sanctification, Kelly.
That doesn't mean that I don't get the opportunity to not love them.
Right.
I can choose. I may not like them because we're like oil and water, or we are like, we are not peanut butter and jelly.
Right.
We do not go together well.
Yes.
So there's those. I have a few of those people. There's lots of people, a couple people that came to mind that I don't like because we're so entirely different in our personalities.
Okay.
But that doesn't give me a pass to not love them.
Right.
I heard something about that. Like there are people that God puts in our path that are like sandpaper. You kind of rub up against each other, but it's the refining process.
Yeah.
The more you work through it, the smoother it's going to be. And God is working on us with the sandpaper of some of our relationships.
And I think that you're getting to the heart of the matter. So my small group has been doing a Bible study by Lisa Turkhurst called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes. And I was telling Kelly this the other day. When we get into issues in relationships, she says that the reason that we have those problems is the level of access that you've given someone does not match their level of responsibility. And I was telling Kelly, I was like, that was a light bulb for me.
It is.
Because a lot of times in relationships, we give people total access and they can only handle like a 3 responsibility. And so we have to get those closer together. And it's just got me to thinking a whole lot because in this Bible study, she talks a lot about getting to know yourself and getting to know what it is about you that bothers you about that relationship. And then like really thinking about that. And I had never really given it that much thought because like you, I was like, their personality is different than mine. And but when you actually think about it, a lot of times it is uncovering something in us that either needs to change or that we want to avoid, or it points out it pulls the blinders off of something in our own lives, right?
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I think it's compassion. That's one of the things I struggle with, and I hate to even admit that out loud because that sounds kind of, that does not sound very holy or Jesus-like. But sometimes the people that get on my nerves are the ones that I realize that I'm not having the compassion for them that Jesus calls me to have the compassion for. That they're the folks that are extra broken, and I need to provide them extra grace and extra compassion. And being a Jesus follower is hard in that way sometimes.
Yeah. For me, I have realized that a lot of my most difficult relationships come down to approval and rejection. That's like my hot button issue. Like if I feel like someone's rejecting me, then I'm going to put up either walls or I am going to reject them so that we're on level playing ground. And it all comes back to me feeling like if you reject me in a relationship, that there's something wrong with me. And that hits at the heart of every challenging relationship that I have in this current season. It has something to do. There's like a common thread woven throughout those things of approval and rejection. So do you have a common theme in some of yours, or have you thought about it?
I think it's similar to what you're talking about. It's almost like PTSD with some relationships.
Oh, yeah.
And say you get in a relationship with someone or you have interactions with them and they make you feel the way someone made you feel a long time ago. And so it's not just that relationship or that conversation. You're bringing all this other, or I'm bringing all this other baggage with me.
Right.
So it becomes much bigger than it should be.
Right.
And I kind of think that's at the heart of the difficulty that I've been having is just it's stimulating all this stuff that I've carried along with me my whole life, and it's bringing it to the forefront.
So kind of like projecting that on that person a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
I think I do that too. As you were saying that, because we all have this filter called our past, and I think we all see relationships and conflict through a different filter based on what we've been through in the past. And when you take time to think about that, you can actually be cognizant of it and make positive change in that direction when you realize it. For me, I think I've just always been such an emotional, like my emotions are like right out there on my shirt sleeves, and so I automatically react with emotion. And then I'm like, what was that? And I never give it a second thought because I haven't ever thought about it. But going through this Bible study and talking through some of the things with my small group, it's been like, whoa, I thought I had really grown in that area, and I really hadn't. I had just kind of painted over it and hoped it wouldn't bleed through, but it has again because I haven't dealt with the issue at hand.
The
right?
deeper part of it. Do you guys do this? Especially in this particular relationship that I've been talking about, but sometimes in others as well. I imagine that person saying something to me that they never said. Or I imagine them saying something to someone else about me that they probably never said. You do that too?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And then I'll play out the entire conversation, how I'm going to handle it, what I'm going to say. And then, it's as if the conversation actually happened. You have all of those same emotions, all of that same physical reaction, emotional reaction. Yeah, I'm totally in that camp.
Mine's not so much that as reading into what they say.
Well, that too. I mean, yes. I do that too.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
100%.
and-
Right. Read between the lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
what they
that
really
must
meant was
mean-
right.
Yes, and it's usually something very bad.
Right.
Or
It's never
condemning.
a positive thing, is it?
She must really like me.
I know,
Yeah.
right? Right. Okay.
I think that gets back to then ourselves.
Yeah.
That we're really coming at this
Yes.
through the filter of our past experiences, our filter of what we think about ourselves and our own insecurities, and then projecting those on the other people that are talking to us, whether or not they ever say that thing that we think they said or not. We're projecting all of that on them.
Oh, yes, 100%. So let's get back to the initial question of liking people and loving them. What is the difference, and how do we as believers live out our faith in relationships? Because I think, at least for me, that can be one of the hardest places to live out your faith. Because oftentimes in those relationships, if both of you are believers, neither one thinks they're wrong.
Sure.
And that's where the sticky part comes in. So how do we not only love people well, but even start to enjoy those relationships?
One thing I've been thinking about, and it's been spurred on by kind of what we've been talking about, is when we do that thing that we've talked about, which is projecting onto that other person, either our past or what we think they're thinking about us or what we imagine they might say to us, it's not fair. It's not fair to them. And to love someone is to be fair. So if I'm approaching an interaction with this person coming from a place that's not fair, then I need to change that and try to let go of those preconceptions and live in the moment and be open to what it is that they are saying and the interactions we are having. Now, it may not be all positive, but at least it's not 20 years back when somebody hurt my feelings that I'm, putting onto you as I'm talking to you. So just the idea that it's not fair to put those things on them.
I heard somebody say it. I don't even remember who said it, but a long time ago. You don't get hysterically historical. Like going back to the beginning.
I think that was Lisa Turkhurst too. I love her.
It?
Yes.
Yeah. But she talked about, going back in every interaction you've ever had with them and projecting. That's really good stuff. So don't do that. I think also what helps me is I can always tell when I have prayed before I have an interaction with someone, as opposed to just going into it with no thought or prayer at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm much more likely I have a right to say this, and I'm going to spit, to pound my fist and to talk about my rights. And a lot of times God humbles me in those moments before and says, no, you just need to listen. You just need to be quiet and listen. So I think prayer for me is a big factor in that.
Without prayer, you're unarmed.
Yeah.
And the arrows can hit, and then you react, or I do. So.
Yeah.
And I also think that setting up boundaries is really important.
Sure.
And we've talked about boundaries multiple times, but boundaries are so important to our own mental health, that if there is somebody who always rubs us the wrong way, it's okay to not spend as much time with that person. Give yourself permission to walk away for a season from a relationship. Relationships can also be seasonal. Your feelings can also be seasonal. And so just because you don't like somebody during this season doesn't mean that if you walk away from that relationship for a season, you pray for them, you pray for the healing of your own heart, then you can come back to that relationship in a place where you're healthier, where the relationship might be healthier, and then you might actually be able to have feelings for them that are not dislike feelings. You can actually like them.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that in a relationship that you can't walk away? Let's say you're sort of mandated to be together. I think it's possible to do that, but let's talk about how.
I think one of the things that has helped me is expectations. We all come to relationships with expectations. And oftentimes when I look at my expectations of the relationship, I am asking them to be something that I know they cannot be. I'll liken it to a spouse. If you are expecting the, fairy tale wedding and dream marriage and you complete me kind of fairy tale, which is what it is, you're going to end up disappointed, because the expectations that we have for relationships, if they're too lofty, it becomes an idol.
It's true.
It's true. And I just think that I go into relationships with expectations that are unrealistic. So I think based on the past interactions that you've had with that person, you can adjust your expectations and kind of emotionally prepare yourself for those difficult conversations. If you can't remove yourself, that is true. But for me, expectations plays a big part of it. Like I need to not necessarily lower my expectations, but to just be realistic about what I expect from this relationship.
One of the other things that came to my mind too is something that my husband and I do. We like to drive separately to things, to family events, to parties with friends, because both of us have different levels of capacity for people. I have more capacity for people usually. He has less capacity for people usually, and that's just the way God made us. So for him, people start getting on his nerves a lot faster than people get on my nerves. And so him driving to a family event, for instance, or to one of our friends' parties separately gives him the freedom to stay as long as he wants, or to leave early if he is beginning to feel the need to distance himself.
That's
from
wisdom.
the
That is.
conversation.
I
And
love
it's really
that.
helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that my husband doesn't like my family or doesn't like our friends,
right.
but he definitely has a different capacity level for people.
I love that you use the word capacity, because that comes into play with relationships as well. And for, Tricia, what you mentioned about people, you can't completely just go away for a season. I think you have to know what your capacity is. And that kind of plays in, I think, well with expectations and to know that, you only have so much gas in the tank before you have to stop and fill up again, right? And that's the same as we become self-aware and say, I have the capacity for about 10 minutes with them. And I know after that 10 minutes that I need to either, go exercise, or I need to, go for a walk, or I need to, go
Take a break
somewhere,
in
call a
some way.
timeout.
And
Yeah.
a lot of that comes down to your own self-awareness too, and
Yeah.
making sure
Yes.
that you've built in support around you. So let's say that person that drives you crazy is a coworker, that you enlist another coworker to say, hey, if I get into a conversation with this person, come up and rescue me in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I know that I have 10 minutes capacity for this person, so come
so
rescue
good.
me in 10 minutes.
That's so good.
But it starts with knowing yourself, knowing what your limits are, knowing what your capacity is, and knowing what your triggers are.
That's true.
And trying to make sure that you anticipate that those triggers are going to happen.
Yeah.
that you're going to be triggered in some way, and then
so that religion and politics are going to come up at the family gathering.
That's right.
Yes. And have it out.
Yeah, right.
But I do love that.
That's right.
And you can pray for self-awareness.
Sure.
That's something that I have actually been doing. Like, show me when, God. And he will answer that prayer, I do believe, especially because we're trying to honor him and love this person that we're having difficulty loving. I was reading something the other day about the fact that God is so big and so amazing that he has parts of himself in each person. We've all got an aspect of God in us. And when we think about what aspect of God is in me, is it creativity? Is it compassion? Is it the ability to love? Is it the ability to, is it humor? We've all got these aspects of God that he's built in us. And this book suggested that when you're struggling to interact with someone, try to think about what aspect of God is in them. What is that part of God in them?
Yeah.
And then we can connect to that and celebrate that part of God that is in them.
Right, because we're all image bearers.
We're
I
all
was
in
thinking
Even
that
the
too.
people that drive us batty
Yeah.
are image bearers. Even the people that don't know him, that don't have a relationship with him,
Yeah.
they are image bearers. And God commands us in his word to love them. And it's one of those commandments that's in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And that means it's a big deal.
He wasn't kidding.
He wasn't kidding.
That's right.
Jesus said in all 4 Gospels,
Yeah.
love your neighbor. That's the second commandment.
Yeah.
Second most important commandment. Love others as you love yourself. So we got to do it. We get to do it. We
Yes,
get to
we get to do
demonstrate
it. We get the
that
opportunity.
attribute of him, and that's how they will know we are Christians, right? Isn't that what it says somewhere in the scriptures?
By
That
their
they
love.
will know we are Christians by our love. That we love, and love to me is not a feeling. Love is a choice. Love is an
act of
action.
obedience.
Yes, it is an act of obedience. Like, I just thought of Jonah, and his. He hated those Ninevites,
Right.
And God said, "Go and tell them about me." And he went,
Nope.
all kinds of other places and said no. But ultimately, he did come back and said, "Okay, God, I will be obedient to you, and even though I don't want to, I will love them in the act of telling them about you. I don't have to like them." And even afterwards, he didn't like them. He didn't like God very much after the fact, because God actually saved all the Ninevites. But he was obedient in his love
Right.
for them, and God gave him the strength to do it. And when we are obedient in our love for God and our love to loving other people because of our obedience to God, he gives us the strength to get through it and do the thing that he's called us to do.
There's something also about the Jonah story that I think is relevant. I've been finding it in my life, is he served. That's the action that you can take, or that I'm trying to take if I'm not relating to a person well. How can I serve them? And sometimes the feelings follow the service. So you don't have to have the feeling before you serve, but you can serve first, and God will then allow the feeling to come.
That's good stuff.
It's not easy, but
No.
I've been trying to think about that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
reminded me of Jesus and Judas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yes.
sure that when Jesus washed Judas's feet, he didn't like him very much.
Wash your own feet.
Right? Yeah, and but he still loved him, and he had
Yeah.
that act of love for him.
Mm-hmm.
To be like that.
Yeah. So the goal is to be more like Jesus every day.
Yes.
So let's look around. Let's check our expectations. Let's check our capacity. Let's check how connected we are to God. And let's find opportunities to serve. My goodness gracious. Those 4 things right there, I think, have the capacity to transform even the most difficult relationships.
And
But-
transform us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably the bigger thing, if we're really honest.
That's the only person we can change.
Yes.
We have no power to change the other person.
Yes. So let's pray that God would help us to do that in our most difficult relationships. If you've got ideas, things that you want to add to the conversation, we would love to hear from you.
Yep.
We always do the happy dance when we get an email from you. girltalk@thelightfm.org is our email address. You can get in touch on the Girlfriends page, on the public Girl Talk podcast page. You are as much a part of this as if you were sitting right here at the table with us. So thank you for getting in touch, letting us hear from you. We love it when you do that. And we will see you next time we gather around these microphones for the next Girl Talk podcast.